I think that, you articulated it so well that pain equals a negative emotion, a negative experience. And I think we need to think of pain or reshape it as it's information. Our body is giving us an indication of something that might be happening, and to your point, like, how do you manage or navigate that pain? Well, it depends. And that's where the relationship comes into play, because you need to know, is this something that you should be working through? Dr. Kevin Marryshow, founding partner at Myodetox and head of communications over at Myodetox. I'm a chiropractor by training. In this episode of Ever Forward, we got an opportunity to talk about how pain is involved in our body and how we can take better control of it. We talked about storytelling and how important that is to reimagining our relationship with our body. It was an incredible conversation. Hope you enjoy.
Kevin, welcome to the show, man. And I just got to say, we're going to get into so much here on the mind-body connection of what keeps us upright and mobile and well and sane. But just your tagline alone, man, feels like I could dive in deeper for hours. And it's, you're here to help people reimagine the relationship between you and your body. And a couple key words in there really stand out to me. And I think imagine and relationship. I think when it comes to our body, we don't imagine enough of what's possible, how to better a situation or to prevent a negative situation from happening, like injury or something like that. But relationship as well. I don't think we all realize how much the relationship with our body is important and how we might have a positive or a negative one or one at all, man. So I'm curious, that mantra, that message, like, where did that come from and how do you help people do that?
Yeah. So, a really powerful question that you're asking there, because it's defining that content has evolved so many times for me. I think starting at, to your point, the idea of a relationship and having one with your body is a great starting point, because I feel like that in and of itself is a bit of a disconnect for most people. And I think that, on the other end of that, it is, we've all been, kind of sold or fed an idea of what it means to either take care of your body or, live a better life. And our perspective gives us the aperture as to how we're going to define it. And the wider that aperture becomes, the better that relationship comes, the stronger it comes. There's just so much access to information. And, the everyday person doesn't necessarily know where to look for it, what's valuable, what's not, what's going to put them in a better position and what's not. And, that particular line on, my IG account came from a place of, I wanted people to feel like my feed was a safe space for them. It was a feed that, I cared a lot about how they were moving, how they were feeling. And I invest a lot of time into putting information out in the world that really helps people embody that mantra. I haven't posted for a really long time, since April. Actually, the day my daughter was born.
I saw that. Yeah, congratulations, by the way. Yeah, not a bad last post, man. Not a bad last post.
Yeah, I take a lot of pride and I invest a lot of time, yourself in, content and media. We all as creatives know how much work it takes to put out not only quality content, but content that we want to feel proud about for a long time. 10 years from now, go back and be like, yeah, things have changed in the world, but I really stand behind the information and the message I put out in that post. And if I can't put my all into it, and my all today beyond Myodetox is taking care of my kids and raising my new daughter, that's kind of taken up a lot of my time. So that's where my feed is at this point.
Oh, I love it, man. I'd love to kind of just dive a little bit deeper into the relationship aspect. I really want the listener to kind of wrap their head around the question, do I have a relationship with my body? And if so, what is it? My goal here, I think, after at least this segment would be for them to really have takeaways, tactical, practical takeaways to learn how to develop a relationship with their body. Or if they're already there and have that level of awareness, to have a better understanding of it and to really own it. Because I think if we can understand and own the relationship with our body, man, that's going to drive so many other factors in our life, especially when it comes to moving and being well.
Yeah, that's the starting point. Having a relationship creates a vessel and an area of opportunity to really, take accountability and ownership. I'll speak to it from, a physical wellness standpoint, by training as a chiropractor and, my colleagues being chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists, right? Like we're all continuing to unpack that, for people in our daily practice. And, I think that storytelling matters a lot when it comes to people having to identify that and being able to fall back on things that make sense to them when they think about imagining that relationship. I think that for whatever reason, and it could point to a lot of points in history or lack of access to information, a relationship with our body, I think, doesn't exist because we haven't been painted a consistent enough simplistic picture to really make it make sense. One of the co-founders of Myo, as you mentioned, we were talking a bit earlier on Vin. I think I don't try to reimagine piecing that story together because he does it so eloquently, which is, you think about your teeth and oral health. Chase, if I asked you, if you had food in your teeth, or if you had, your gums were sore, or you had a cavity, you might not have the exact answer, but you have a general idea as to the steps that you might take, whether it is this a toothpick or am I, going to a dental hygienist, right? Like you have it. There's a more clear flow chart in your mind of what my relationship with my oral health is. But when it comes to your body, Chase, have you had back pain before?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's generally most people's answer. And, when you experience that pain, your relationship comes from how are you going to manage that, right? Is this on the gym floor? Is this, in your home gym? Is this, you got to go look for advice or support? There's not a lot of clarity on, your back hurts when you extend leaning back or flexing forward. Pain in either one of those directions mean two different things, right? If you're getting pain down your leg, into your butt, into your hamstring, that's a little bit different from the pain just being in your back. If you're getting pain all the way down into your big toe, that's another situation, right? So your relationship is dependent on how much context you have, how much awareness you have as to what each one of those experiences mean. And the more you know, the more control you could take over those experiences.
I think pain is one of our most valuable teachers. I love getting into the mindset stuff, but we're going to table that component of pain right now. But physical pain, back pain, hip pain, knee pain, any kind of pain in the body, I think a lot of people overlook, and I definitely have overlooked as a teacher. And instead, it kind of made me, or due to my lack of awareness, understanding of the human body, develop a negative relationship with my body. Walk us through getting out of that, because I think some people are probably, their pain is leading to a negative relationship with their body. But if we developed a better relationship with pain to understand what it is teaching us in the body, ideally that's going to cascade down to the body relationship, right?
Yeah, reframing how we experience the word and the concept of pain is just so important to us. I think that, you articulated it so well that pain equals a negative emotion, a negative experience. And I think we need to think of pain or reshape it as it's information. Our body is giving us an indication of something that might be happening, and to your point, like, how do you manage or navigate that pain? Well, it depends. And that's where the relationship comes into play, because you need to know, is this something that you should be working through? Is this something that you should...
Yeah. Is this like a tolerance threshold thing, or hey, hold up, pump the brakes kind of thing?
Exactly. And it's really hard to, identify what type of pain this is to you in that very moment. But what it is an indicator to dig a little bit deeper, to look for more information, to ask more questions about, A, why are you experiencing this? B, is this something you should be concerned about? And C, how do you manage it? So I love your question around, just pain. And, we can get into probably for another pod, like all of the nuances and layers that come along with pain. If we pick apart, as we term this biopsychosocial model, like that's the bio is only the physical pain that we're experiencing. But, there's a social component to this. Is this going to, impact my work? Can I make money because of this? Can I interact with my friends, my family? Can I do the things that I love? There's so much layers when it comes to pain and how we experience it. So I think it's more than just, my hip is in pain. The question that I often ask, patients that I work with is, Chase, you're experiencing this hip pain. I know it's painful. I know it's on your mind. I know it's bothering you, but I know you're here because it's holding you back from something bigger, something greater. You can't pick up your son or your daughter, or you can't play tennis, and, your social interactions are being impacted. That's really why you're here. So my question is always, when we overcome this, when we recover, like, Chase, what's next for you? Because that's what I want to focus on. Because you could potentially play tennis with pain. Right. But like, where's the green, yellow, red light in that pain experience? Is this red? I got to go see Kevin. We got to work through this. We've talked about what this pain experience is, or is this a green? When I go home, I'm going to work on X, Y, Z, because Kevin and I talked about it, and I got a good foundation for how I'm going to manage this.
What I think you're hitting on, at least what I'm kind of taking away, because it's funny you bring up chase and hip pain. Like, absolutely, I've been there. That's so much of my story is hip pain, is identity. And I think for me, when I look back to pain, especially with my body, I'm kind of just mentally unpacking now how much identity I had wrapped up in the pain, and then what the pain meant for my body, and then what those limitations or capabilities then meant for my livelihood. Long story short, my audience knows this story, but hips, blew out my low back and my hips my time in the military, and wound up having completely reconstructive hip surgery, bilateral hip surgery. And the pain was real. And ultimately, the pain led to my physical state not being able to do my job anymore. And then therefore that led to my medical discharge. And so much of my identity was wrapped up in what my body could do as a soldier, but that was taken away because of the pain and everything that happened there. So that was like one thing that pain led to confusion in identity and my body's purpose. But then also, kind of like on the other end of the spectrum with that, forcing pain on my body through going to the gym and training really hard years after this situation came from a mental pain. I'll never forget this. This one moment, my father, who was terminally ill for a while, and I came home one time on leave, and my stepmom called me into the bedroom, and he had fallen out of the wheelchair, and she couldn't pick him up. She couldn't get him out of the bathroom floor. And I'm like 19 at the time. I'm still getting my body up, I'm still getting strong. I'm kind of new to the whole training world, but even I could not lift my father up out of the floor and onto his chair. We had to get a bunch of other people, and that stuck with me. And honestly, so many times when I'm walking up to the bar to try to do a heavy deadlift or even like a PR or even just a ground floor lift of anything, I go back to that mental pain. And so I think the physical pain and identity, and then mental pain and identity, are probably just like the total ends of the spectrum here when we're talking about relationship and what we can do or what we think we can't do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Really powerful story. And, it speaks to the connection between mind and body. I think we talk about them mutually exclusive, but they're not. They impact each other so profoundly. I think, you articulating identity as a huge part of this discussion, between how we experience pain, what it means to us, and how that pain could, is ultimately change who we are, unfortunately, right? Unless we have a real grasp over that. I wasn't familiar, with your work before your team reached out and we got on this pod, and I've listened to a bunch of episodes since followed, because a lot of the stories of your guests really resonate with me in so many different ways. And I believe it was a conversation you had with Ivana, and y'all were talking about
De Maria. Yeah.
And y'all were talking about personal identity and separating that from the way that you show up. I am Chase, and I happen to have athletic abilities. I am Chase, and I serve my community in this way. And I think that separation from who you are and the way that you show up it's so powerful, because it sets you up to mitigate those moments where your identity gets so wrapped up in your physical wellness, and it gives you space to experience, space to recover, space to not get so caught up and lost in how that experience is reshaping your identity.
So true, man. I received that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But you as a practitioner, someone who helps people stay upright and mobile, to work through acute and chronic pain, injury. How do you translate that? Because I feel like people like us and a lot of people listening to the show, like we kind of get it, or we're on the path to getting that, of the mind-body connection and how much more important it is to work through an injury properly and work on injury prevention, and how really important the mind-body connection is. But I feel like someone walks in, right, and they're just like, hey, my back hurts, like fix me. It's more than that, right? How do you translate that to somebody who is just trying to get started?
Yeah, I'll kick off by saying it's hard. I've been in practice for this is my 11th year, and I still continue to iterate on and unpack how to convey narratives, messages, solutions in a palatable and tangible way for people. And you got to meet them where you're at. Full transparency. The reason why I clicked on that Ivana discussion that you had is because it was around storytelling. And that's what I do every day. That's what all of my colleagues across the entire world do, because relatability is so important to clinical outcomes. It's been very well documented that if you can relate to the stories of the practitioner, the clinician that's working with you, it already drives better outcomes because of the psychosocial component to pain and recovery and, and performance. So I take a lot of time as best as I can to learn more about your story, chase in through, let's say, your intake form or whatever information or nuggets I can get beyond your hip pain. I chose hip because generally hip, back, neck is something that,
I'm still there. I'm still there. My left one still gives me issues. So please keep with the hip theme. I'm taking it in.
Well, we'll keep it there. We'll keep it there. Yeah, so I clicked on that episode because of the storytelling piece. Story matters a lot in every scenario. I spend a lot of time in, working through operations and strategy and presenting ideas and innovating. And I rarely show up without a deck because I feel like the visuals are so important because you're learning. Every time I'm going through a deck and talking to the team about a potential idea or something we should be considering doing or an area of opportunity, I'm trying to teach the group about a problem that matters, a problem that we can collaborate on solving. So, back to the clinician patient experience, if I can't create relatability in either a story or in my own experience, if my favorite experience, clinician to client, is if I've gone through what you're going through. Mm-hmm. It's a whole new ball game we're about to play. For me to say, Chase, I've tried to run a marathon and my Achilles held me back. I was going through chronic Achilles issues. I wasn't able to compete that day. My bib's still sitting in my bedroom as inspiration. That story matters. If I know that that's what your end goal is, and if I can meet you there, it completely changes the therapeutic experience, our therapeutic alliance, and, the likelihood of clinical outcomes. Diversity in healthcare matters a lot to me. It's work that I, continue to work through doing. And in my own personal experiences, the story, at least I tell myself, is my body let me down from being a pro athlete. And that's why I don't play in the NBA right now. That's at least what I've sold myself. And in that experience, I wanted to stay close to sports, close to basketball, close to the game. And I didn't know if healthcare would accept me, for lack of a better way of putting it, because
why do you say that?
I say that because there was nobody in my experiences through healthcare, whether I was working with, physiotherapist or a family practitioner. Nobody looked like me. Nobody came from where I came from. So there was always a disconnect in, can I occupy space? And I was just so fortunate. And I'm born and raised in Toronto. University of Toronto has a summer mentorship program created for BIPOC students who want to get into healthcare. And in that experience, all of the instructors were practicing medicine of some sort, and they were all folks of color. And that was my first experience where I believed I can take up space. And, I say all of that full circle to come back to, if there is relatability in the room in that therapeutic experience, you already have buy-in because there's common ground. Needless to say, Chase, once we get through the assessment on your hip, at least I can talk to you about things that you care about, right? Whether you hoop or it's sports or it's family life, like I got to meet you somewhere, because the other 20 minutes of that session when working on you and, silence is not a great part of the experience either. I can talk about things that matter to you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. And it takes me back to when I was coaching, working with people, that relatability and humanization, especially when you're looking at the practitioner, client, coach, client, trainer, client relationship, I think is one of the most overlooked tools in the toolbox. If I had to sum it up into, hey, what's the secret sauce in helping your client the most with their problem here and now, or their goal here and now, but also instilling in them true long-term adherence, is meet them where they are, like you said, but like as a human being, not you above them. And so many times when I would sit in my office, sit in my practice, and I would hear these stories of people of their excuses, their barriers, legitimate, illegitimate, whatever, to starting or adhering to whatever maybe we were working on. I would throw all the other stuff out the window. Whatever the program was, whatever the meal plan was, whatever the plan of action was, like, we'll come back to that. But you know what? When I came, not to say it came down to their level, but when I was Chase, the human being, and they were whoever they were. And I just, you know, I've been there. You know, I've gone through this weight gain. I've gone through this weight loss. I've gone through this loss of a family member that derailed my training. I've gone through an injury. I've gone through uncertainty in my profession, and that really trickled into my healthy habits. That is when the light bulbs went off. And that was when they were like, okay, I'm not alone, really. I'm not alone. And, you know, and if you can do it and you're on the other side and you're the, you know, the expert here, the professional to provide that guidance now, man, they had the best success for the longest time.
Yeah. You know, you put it so well on the light bulb moment. That's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for the eyes to open up a bit wider where, you know, you get me, you understand my experiences. And when I feel like we've crossed that chasm, then let's get started, right? Like that is the starting point to the therapeutic alliance to, you know, dig it into like now truly assessing like your physical wellness and what you're experiencing physically, because we've made a connection and the likelihood of our outcomes is just 10x.
So true, man. So true. What are you seeing most these days? You know, here we are, you know, as we're recording this, kind of getting towards the end of 2022, maybe this year, the last 2 years with, you know, everything that's been going on in the world. So many people's work dynamic, life dynamic, physical activity dynamic has changed. I think a lot of people would say it's changed, or maybe we're kind of settling into our new right now. Are you seeing something that is a new problem or to be mindful of that is like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of people dealing with this injury or this physical ailment, or due to maybe these changes, I see something on the horizon that we can help get ahead of now?
Yeah, I actually see more opportunity rather than more of a problem.
You hear that, everybody? I love that.
Yeah.
Opportunity, no problems. Yeah, man.
Yeah. And I say that because people are far more in tune with what they feel. I think that rather than, you know, a problem that's existed in the last 2 years while we've been going through all of these changes, and as you mentioned, our new you, I think there's an opportunity. Like I definitely see an opportunity, not even an opportunity per se, but people experiencing a moment where they are more in tune with their body than they've ever been, for better or for worse, but they're so there.
True. Yeah, yeah.
And we talked about it a second ago, which is your relationship with your body. I think by default, it has improved, it's increased. And, you know, I should rather say increase because, again, for better or for worse, people are either experiencing something a bit more that's a bit more polarizing or limiting to them, or they are ready, right? They're ready to take on more, to do more. I've seen more compliance in, you know, people's flexibility in their own lives in a lot of ways have changed. And they want to fill up that void with self-care, with self-help, with asking more questions, with unpacking the things that they felt like they didn't have enough time for. It's been so long. I've been experiencing, you know, this knee issue, and it's really holding me back from getting in the gym or squatting or playing sports or, you know, doing whatever it is that fills them up. And I think the opportunity exists in feeling like they have the space to jump right in. And I think getting started is generally the hardest part for most people for various reasons, whether it's access, time, whatever it is that's going on. And, you know, I think that in the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of people take advantage of recognizing that there's an opportunity and there is help. And I'm just really proud of the people that I've worked with that have really jumped on head in.
Now, a lot of what you do is very physical. Damn near, I say majority of everything's very physical. So as best as possible, how can you translate this process to the listener, to the viewer here? You know, I've experienced this type of work, and I'll say it's usually not pleasant. But when you're on the other side of it, it's the most pleasant thing in the world, because whether I'm working through pain, I'm working through a chronic injury, or just trying to just optimize my biomechanics and just increase mobility, increase flexibility, which ultimately then leads to me increasing strength, right? If I can move better and in better ways and cross all planes, then odds are I'm going to be able to maintain, even build some more strength. So how do you translate what you do specifically? And why does it have to hurt before we can feel better, usually?
Yeah, so, you know, really powerful question, because there's so much nuance to the translation of what we do. You know, if I speak on the therapist or clinician end, I think we got to fill up our own cup first. So, you know, I like to term it snacks. We got to snack on exercise and movement all day long. On my page, I'll often put up stories of me working on my own body in between working with patients or before treating or after treating, because, if we're not, I got to invest in it myself. I got to invest in myself and really buy into, what I'm preaching and what I'm holding my patients accountable to, because I want them to hold me accountable to the same thing. They ask me, how my trainings go and how my Achilles feeling, like whatever it is that I'm experiencing, because again, back to the relatability piece, if we connect on that level and they know that, I'm overcoming physical hurdles in the same way they are, then, I'm not Superman for them. I just happen to know a little bit more, and we're going to work together on you getting there. And then, translating, to your question on how do you make therapy or recovery more palatable to, the everyday person? I think that you already started on the right track there, which is you got to move better to get to the next level. There's a spectrum of, pain and injury all the way to optimal performance. And we're going to assess like where on that continuum you're at. And, Mayo's tagline of future-proof your body is because it's a never-ending journey of chasing longevity and an appreciation that you're not always going to move up that spectrum. You're going to have some moments where you move down it a little bit, but knowing that the spectrum exists and the work doesn't end when you're out of pain, and the work actually just begins, because that's when you're moving your best, you're at your freest. And that's when we get to, build on what we've been working on. So simplifying it down to, manual therapy is important. Myself, physical therapists, massage therapists, and a lot of manual practitioners out there leverage manual therapy as a tool to empower people, to put them in a position to move better, to create space to move better. But what's most documented and most well documented around recovery and, feeling good and rehabilitation is movement, right? Like that is the pinnacle. Depending on where you are on the spectrum, we can get right into movement. We might have to work through some things to get you to a place in which you're on your feet and moving well, but you got to have a catalog in your mind that you can default and fall back on. As we use the low back pain example earlier, is this pain just in your back when you're bending forward a little bit, or is this going all the way down to your toe? And you need to know how to manage both of those experiences. And that comes from conversation, increasing your knowledge base. So, we tend to break it down to as simplistic as possible. Manual therapy and movement, that's your basis of how we're going to get through this. And it's a spectrum. Things are more acute, things are bothering you a bit more. We might get a bit more hands-on to create a more solid foundation. When you're moving and feeling your best self, then we get to like move into corrective exercise, movement optimization, and anywhere along that spectrum is where you might be. And I found that that's really resonated with people talking about it on a spectrum.
What I kind of hear you describing there is what I would describe as integration, the manual therapy and movement, because it's really like you need both to maximize what you're after, right? And in this case, it's I want to feel my best, move my best for as long as possible, just in general, or working through an injury. But it's the same thing when we're talking about like kind of like the mental pain and mental anguish, and when we're putting in the mental work reps of, I think of when I go to my therapist or I have a really intense psychotherapy session or even like a plant medicine session. I've gone through ketamine assisted psychotherapy, with my therapist, and like the session itself is the work, right? The really, really intense experience. That's the quote here, manual therapy. But then that's going to serve a purpose. But in order for me to really apply it and for my mind and body to not go back to the same habits and same technical movement patterns, it's the integration component. It's the follow-up with my therapist afterwards, with my trainer afterwards. It's the manual therapy and then movement, because what good is it to just reset a canvas if it's going to be painted with the same colors again,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like the recent wave in the narrative around mental health and mindfulness has been just so powerful. And I think that there's platforms that have been built that, really paints a beautiful picture around the same spectrum. So for example, take meditation. I think there's just so much power in guided meditation and like listening to conversations and motivation and mindfulness, knowing that some of the, the strongest and most trained practices is like absolute silence, but it's a process to get to that kind of safe space in your mind where you can exist for a while to help yourself reset. Like it takes a lot of work to get there. And, and similar to physical wellness, like Duncan basketball might be the end point, but we need to establish like where on the spectrum you are today and, establish a plan to get there.
Man, what a concept there, to get to a safe space. I don't think we're fully aware of, like, that's really the ultimate goal here we're talking about, of understanding and working through pain in any form. The ultimate goal here is, like, I want to be in a safe space again. I want to be safe in my own body, safe in my daily living, safe in my exercise of choice, to not go down this path again of pain and injury. I want to feel safe as long as possible, physically and mentally. I mean, and I think that's just a really unique concept to think about, that we probably don't when we're talking about this type of work. Is like, I want to heal, but if you get safe, if you have a total mindset of safety, man, you're like bulletproof almost.
Yeah, I think that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just so well documented, and it's been in textbooks for a really long time. And I actually think that in the last 2 or 3 years, it's been reorganized a bit. But I think the foundation of it, around safety and shelter, I think that we haven't expanded what safety means enough. I think we automatically go to a couple of ideas in our minds, and there's more space that could be occupied in the concept of safety. I think that belonging and physical wellness, where they were on the spectrum, I think it's become far more foundational than it ever has before. But where I'm going with this is, at that bottom rung, safety, I think there's space to fill that bucket up a bit more.
So what about you personally, man? I mean, we were kind of talking about your story a little bit before. Former basketball player, or the dream was to be that professionally. It kind of sounds like you had to pivot a little bit. Where did all this come from for you? Let's get a little bit of the backstory, man.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with sports my entire life. I played a lot of basketball. I was a hurdler, and I played a lot of volleyball. Also, I hurdled at a collegiate level or a university level here in Toronto, and I just got hurt a lot. Mainly for me, my knees. My knees were my big issue. Just jumping through basically all of my sports, I developed a lot of knee tendinopathies, Osgood-Schlatter's. For your listeners not familiar, it's kind of a bump when it ossifies, but basically the tendon on the top of your tibia, which is your lower leg bone, you've just been pulling at it so much without, moderating or adapting the amount of stress. Nobody told me, slow down or choose one sport, or, you might need to diversify your training a little bit. I just kept jumping. Right. So in those experiences and those challenges, I became really obsessed with my body and how I was going to navigate it. Watching a lot of basketball and knowing that a lot of these folks had access to entire medical staff, and they'd, be out 2 to 3 weeks, and then they're back playing at a high level.
They had a dream team, of all sorts.
Yeah. So, for me, I'm like, what was happening in that room that I didn't get access to or see, but they're coming back to play at a high level again, whether that's off of an ACL injury or just like a nagging injury, they find ways to mitigate and get back on the court. And, today we have more access than we ever had. There's so much more insight into actually what's happening behind those doors. But for me, I'm gonna date myself right now, but I'm in a library opening up anatomy textbooks and essential strength and training conditioning books to figure out, like, how am I going to navigate this myself? At the time, manual therapy was very modality based, a lot of ultrasound I've seen, and managed the pain a little bit, but wasn't enough to really get me over the hump, because I didn't understand the place that, training and recovery, what it should have taken up in my own recovery. And then I just became obsessed with trying to help people who had the same dreams and aspirations as I did not succumb to their injuries. I have this vision in my mind that, you could, create an entire, whether it's a podcast or a docuseries around, what ifs. I'm a big basketball guy. So, Tracy McGrady I was a huge fan of Tracy McGrady growing up. And, that's another what if story. I think that Tracy McGrady could have been one of the top 10 players of all time. But, physical limitations limited from him playing at a high level for a really long time. And that exact same story can be pointed to a lot of points in history across not only sports, but just physical, where physical abilities was necessary for somebody to accomplish a certain goal. The what if stories, they eat me up. And I just kind of set out on a journey to minimize and mitigate how many what if stories exist in the world.
It's funny you say that. I'm in a bit of a what if period right now. Quite literally, we're recording this here in like end of October 2022. And my original life plan before these injuries in the military, I was like, shit, I joined when I was like 17, do the 20 years, retire. That's what you can do in the U.S. service. And so like literally, I just turned 37 like last week. So right now, my first life plan would be wrapping up. I would be going into retirement after 20 years of service in the military. I keep thinking, you know, what if I would have stayed in? What if my injuries wouldn't have prevented me from needing to get discharged? What if? I think we go through this what if concept a lot in life, you know, day to day, like, oh, if I would have turned left instead of right kind of thing, I wouldn't have been late to work. But it's really different when we're talking about our life. What if my original plan worked out? What if I wouldn't have dated her, wouldn't have dated him? What if I, whatever? And when you think about it and you're looking at your life plan, I mean, that is a really, really powerful question. Potentially can take you down some interesting roads, but it's the most important thing I think we can do, and I heard that you did it in your story, was to use that what if to not only better yourself, but to help others in similar situations. So I'm glad that you took that route, man. And that's exactly why we're here talking. You know, that's why people like you exist, you know, to be here on the show.
I appreciate that. And happy belated birthday.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Hope you got to live that up.
Maybe I'll still do a retirement party. I don't know. But
yeah. You know, the what if story is big inspiration for me. You know, even I value a lot in the way that you position that, because I felt like you left space for interpretation of, you know, what that means for you. And, you know, talking about what if, I think that, you know, you articulated that I went left and I should have gone right. Taking a moment to reflect on why you did go left allows us an opportunity to really reflect and expand on our perspective. But we got to keep going. Right? We got to keep going. We got to learn from how things ended up and the decisions that we made and, you know, where we ended up. But in there is perspective. In there are learning opportunities, and we should take those lessons with us into the next iteration of our life. And you've clearly done so. So those what ifs, we could shape them into our advantage.
So true, man. So true. Well, I couldn't think of a better way to kind of bring up my last question here. And I think you definitely were kind of already summarizing it, but that's what I'm talking about when I say ever forward, to live a life ever forward. That's the whole concept of the show here. And the mindset we're after, no matter what we're talking about here with myself or the guests, you know, I say physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, it all matters. It all matters. But first of all, whatever we're going to do about whichever one of those buckets is a choice. And then where the mind goes, the body will follow. So I always ask my guests their interpretation of ever forward. When you hear those two words, man, what does it mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward?
Yeah, so as a therapist by trait, sometimes I get blinders around just like physical wellness, the body. And I think a lot about locomotion. And, you know, we were designed to continue to put one foot in front of the other and continue to, you know, move forward. And I think that, you know, there's a beautiful picture of you walking down this road that happens to go straight for a really long time. And I'm in a metropolis city, so we don't have a lot of those. But, you know, where you can and you paint that picture of being able to look back and there's just this long stretch of road behind you. There's beauty in that moment. There's beauty in the reflection of, you know, how far you've come. But, you know, as quickly as you can, you got to snap your head back forward and keep progressing, keep moving, keep iterating on what you learn in that quick reflection, looking back. So, you know, ever forward makes me think about the human body. It makes me think about, you know, locomotion and what we were designed to do, which is to put one foot in front of the other. And, you know, sometimes we're going to have to look back, turn around, take a couple of steps backward for whatever reason that might be. But the ultimate agenda is to keep it moving forward. Oh,
I love that, man. I mean, moving forward, living life ever forward. It is not maybe at first glance or first consideration, total abandonment of the past. And I'm just blinders moving forward. It's that kind of constant dance, that moving forward, looking backwards, not moving backwards, but looking backwards, because it wasn't that long ago that we were just one step behind, you know? So there's still a lesson to be learned there, but we got to keep that momentum. That locomotion matters. Keep moving forward, but do not put a blind eye to the past, because it still has a lot to teach you. And no matter where you go or how you get there, that past is coming with you. So it's up to you to determine and to apply what relationship it's going to have in your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, dude, thank you so much. This was my pleasure. Your work is incredible. I love the whole team over at Myo. It's been great to see you guys grow more and more over the years. And speaking from someone who is a fanboy and has received treatment as well, shit works. Shit works. It's good, man.
Chase, I really appreciate that. You got a left hip that sounds like it still needs some.
It needs some TLC. It needs some TLC. And actually, I haven't popped in yet, but actually, I live right by the West Hollywood location down here in California. So I'm overdue, man. I'm overdue.
Got it. Amazing. I'll be making some trips out there soon. So hopefully we could get together and I can help you figure out that spectrum.
Hurt me, but help me, right?
All at the same time.
Well, Kevin, where can everybody connect with you and learn more about your work and what you do? We're going to have all this down in the show notes and podcast notes for everybody, but where can they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my own personal handle on IG is @dr_hybrid. So Dr. Kev _hybrid. At Myodetox is our main page handle. As you mentioned, West Hollywood, we have clinics across LA, Toronto, and Vancouver. We have aspirations of continuing to open up in those regions and supporting more and more communities and, across Canada and the US and hopefully beyond.
Beautiful. Well, you guys definitely want to check them out. If you're in any kind of pain or just want to move better, they're great. They're so good at what they do. So check them out.
That's a lot, Chase. Appreciate you, man.